So I've been trying to show how religion will always be important to people. There will forever be aspects to it that will never go away. And people, all people I do believe, are each religious about something. It's just a matter of what it is they are religious about. Religion isn't going away anytime soon. And people who've studied this are saying that the 21st century will be less secular than it was just a short time ago. There have been incredible shifts toward Christianity in sub-Saharan Africa and in China, along with some parts of Latin America. They say that overall in the world, religion is even steadily growing. Belief in God makes sense to a lot of people, even despite the secularization of places like us in the modern West. The immediate question is then why? Why does religion still grow amid so much secular opposition? Some might answer that most people in the world are simply undereducated, while others might be a bit more blunt and respond because most people are idiots. But a more thoughtful and less cynical answer is in order. There are two good answers to the question of why religion continues to persist and grow. One explanation is that many people find secular reason to have things missing from it that are necessary to live life well. And another explanation is that great numbers of people intuitively sense a transcendent realm beyond this natural world. So the first point, an awareness of something missing. And one of the world's most prominent philosophers recently startled the philosophical establishment when he said that he now believes that secular reason alone cannot account for what he calls the substance of the human. He argues that science cannot provide the means to judge whether its technological inventions are good or bad for human beings. To do that, we must know, what a good human person is. And science cannot adjudicate morality or define such a thing. Social sciences, they may be able to tell us what human life is, but not what it ought to be. The dream of humanists was that religion would decline and that would lead to less warfare and conflict. Instead, the 20th century has been marked by even greater violence performed by states that were outwardly non-religious and operating on the basis of purely scientific rationality. So realistically, those who are still confident that philosophical reason is capable of determining what is true and false and capable of creating human justice and peace need only to simply look at the catastrophes of the 20th century, where fascist and communist states operating on the basis of practical reason and rejecting religion, then you see that this confidence is misplaced, to say the least. Sure, terrible deeds at points have been done in the name of religions, but secularism has not proven to be an improvement. A big proof of this was the use of eugenics. Eugenics and race sciences used to be a scientific field at an earlier time. They thought that it was perfectly logical to conclude that it would be more socially and economically cost-effective if those who were genetically more prone to live non-productive lives preferably did not pass on their genes. In other words, it would be better off if some people did not reproduce, was their conclusion. However, it was the horrors of World War II, not science, that ended up discrediting eugenics. The death camps that happened aroused the moral intuition that eugenics, while perhaps scientifically efficient as the scientists in their field concluded, it was in the end evil. Yet if you believe that it is evil, you have to find support for your conviction in some source beyond science and beyond the strictly cost-benefit rationality of practical reason, right? So where can you look to support this feeling about something like eugenics? The philosopher I referenced earlier said, the ideals of freedom, of conscience, and human rights are the direct legacy of the Judaic ethic of justice and the Christian ethic of love. To this day, there is no alternative to it. So obviously, none of this denies that science and reason are sources of great good for human society. The point is rather that science alone cannot serve as a guide for human society. Science is a magnificent material study, but it is not a teacher of morals. It can perfect machinery, but it adds no moral restraint to protect society from any misuse of said machinery. Science does not and cannot teach brotherly love. Secular scientific reason is a great good, but if taken as the sole basis for human life, it will be discovered that there are too many things we need that it is missing. Essentially, all science can do is reduce phenomena into manageable and studyable units. For example, science can help explain what chemical responses in your brain happen when love is present, but if we assert, as virtually everybody does, that things like love and meaning and morals do not merely feel real because of chemical responses, but that they actually are real, science can't support that. A great quote from a book I read, the author said, "Scientific knowledge is inapplicable to the central aspects of human life." And by that he means hope, love, beauty, honor, suffering, and virtue. That book made a lot of good points about that. It was a memoir of his life's reflections by a young neurosurgeon who wrote about his journey back toward faith when he was dying of cancer. He had been an ironclad atheist, but the whole problem with that material conception of reality became evident to him. He realized that there was no scientific proof for the reality of meaning and virtue, things he was sure existed. It made him rethink his whole view of life. The way he worked it out was that if the premise of secularism led to conclusions he knew were not true, specifically that in secularism things like love, meaning, and morals are illusions, then it was time to change his premise. He found it no longer unreasonable to believe in God. He came to a belief not only in God, but also in, quote, the central values of Christianity, sacrifice, redemption, forgiveness, because I found them so compelling, he said. Mr. Kalanithi, the young author I was referencing, he found that the completely secular point of view had too many things missing that he knew were both necessary and real. So what I found truly profound was that he also referred to forgiveness as one reason he left secularism behind. Any person who is a counselor or psychologist or works in those fields will concur that the greatest therapeutic method for reconciling people's deep hostility and anger towards another person is to reach the point of forgiveness. Scientific psychology cannot speak to why this is. It cannot prove why a changed heart heals relational wounds, but it does. In all modes of counseling, the counselor is helping the patient look for a change of heart. Secular reason, all by itself, cannot give us a basis for changing our hearts. It cannot give us a basis for sacrifice, redemption, and forgiveness.